Even getting my daughter to be bilingual is a total experiment that somehow worked out. Because at home, I'll speak English only to the kids, and then my wife will speak Japanese to them. And then as a supplement, we use TV or YouTube, really, and that's English only. And she'll learn a lot of. She obviously picked up a lot of slang and communication skills, like communication phrases, I guess, through watching YouTube. And her mannerisms changed, which basically Japanese people don't touch each other, right? But when she was hanging out with my friends' kids, she was totally, tapping them on the shoulder, giving them hugs, and pulling them by the arm. And I was like, where did this come from? Who are you? She totally changed. And I thought that was really cool to see that, she can adapt in those ways.
Good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. It is really a pleasure to have you with us. We have a new topic to talk about today. It's about parenting, and we have never covered the topic before, but it is a very interesting one, of course, but also it's always up to date. So once again, feel free to join us or share your questions and comments in the room chat if you cannot comment. So thank you very much, Alex. It's a pleasure to welcome you today. So as we talked before, could you please give us a little bit more information about you, and then let's dive straight into parenting as a foreigner in Japan.
Yeah, thanks, Maya and Tim and Timothy. I appreciate the invitation. You guys bringing me on here. I'm Alex. I'm father of two. I'm from New York, and I've been in Japan for 17 years. And as I was just explaining, to Maya a couple minutes ago, me and my wife decided last November to stay in Japan forever. And that led to, I guess, to this discussion about raising two kids in Japan, as a mixed couple, bilingual, bicultural, all that stuff. And just trying to, I guess, take the best of both worlds and kind of raise the kids in that type of environment. That's where I am.
Yeah, that's great, because I can see, and I have heard quite a lot of foreigners, expatriates or long-term residents think about whether to go back to the United States or to stay in Japan and raise their kids. And I have also talked with some who have decided to go back, of course, and others who have made the opposite decision of that, like you and your wife, to stay here and raise their kids as bilingual and bicultural individuals. So, but what actually helped you make that decision? Why did you decide to stay here and not go back to the United States?
Yeah, there's a lot. But I guess key point was, it's sad to say, but safety. I'm from New York, and New York is New York. But I saw this Walmart ad on the internet, and I thought it was a joke. But it was like a back-to-school sale with bulletproof backpacks for the kids. And I thought it was an internet joke. And it turns out that was actually a real Walmart ad, right? And that was just one of the triggers, honestly. I was just like, I can't believe... I don't want to raise my children in an environment where we have to think about bulletproof backpacks and compare those details, when we're school shopping. Like that just seemed a little ridiculous to me. So at least staying here, as they grow up, and once they get to high school, college age, they can go wherever they want. But at least I know I can get them to that line as safely as possible here, without those kind of risks, And also, Japan is cool. I like Japan. I love Japan. It's my second home. I've lived here almost half my life now. And there's a lot of really great things about this country. And, all the diversity and, those other, multicultural stuff. I thought we could stay here and mitigate that ourselves, just by, meeting people like you and creating communities where our kids can, just hang out and barbecue together. Like I figured that would be enough to kind of mitigate the downsides of living in Japan.
So, but what are the things that you really think are helpful for you? Or let's start even before you actually had kids. What did you enjoy about Japan? Because you said there are quite a few things that are enjoyable, that are good, but what are some of them? Maybe you can tell us what you find really good here and interesting.
This would be a good time to share my origin story, I guess. So, like I said, I came to Japan 17 years ago, and I came here as a DJ because I had dreams of making it big in the music business. And I was able to actually hit all my goals as a DJ, and I was able to live my dreams. And Japan was kind of my land of opportunity. That I could do a lot of what I wanted to do here, and I could realize my dreams, and I could really grow into who I wanted to be, by living in Japan. So it started as in the music business, and then after that I was doing a lot of freelance work, and that led me to what I do now, which is basically consulting to help Japanese companies get out of Japan and start, entering global markets. And it's basically what Japan has done for me, but I'm doing in reverse. So me coming here, I was able to catch a lot of opportunity, and I want to be able to help Japanese people, Japanese businesses do that going abroad. And I was able to kind of carve out my little niche and live how I wanted to live. And I want to keep that going for my kids as well. That we can kind of create this environment or community where they can really learn and get the best of both worlds. From the things in Japan and things not overseas, and well, for me specifically from America. And I think that's what's going to help them, prepare them for the world 20 years later when they actually enter the workforce and they need to be independent. And I was I just want to basically give them as much opportunity as possible when they grow up.
You know what I love about what you just told us is that you think that Japan is, or can be, the land of opportunity. And sometimes when I talk with Tim and we talk about the opportunities you get as foreigners here, because there are many opportunities that we can see as somebody who came later on in their life, as compared to the people who were born and raised here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I have seen this, and I believe that obviously there are opportunities for everybody here. I mean, even for the local people, but at the same time, there is something, coming from a different place, you come with a different perspective. And that perspective helps you actually spot things and notice things that are not so obvious to those who were born and raised here. And that's the case not only in Japan. I would say that this happens, in every part of the world with everybody who is non-native to the culture and country they live in at the moment. But what are some of the things that, if you allow me, to push you a little bit further.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you mentioned that you found Japan to be your land of opportunity, and you carved your little niche here. But at the same time, were there any challenges for you? Did you feel at some point that it was difficult for you to get this or get that, or to achieve your goals or every next goal? Because you mentioned that at the point when you came as a DJ, you actually achieved them. But how about after that, when you decided to transition into a different role?
Yeah, good question. I think, a little bit like what you said before, Maya, that, coming from outside of Japan with, older eyes, we see things a little differently. And we can see things here that the local people might not have noticed when they were growing up, or if they don't notice these things if they don't really go outside of Japan. But for me, I haven't had any like real challenges like that. Like you said, like we're, coming to Japan, we're not Japanese, and we will never be Japanese. And that's actually is okay with me, because a lot of those cultural aspects that, a lot of people, a lot of Japan is kind of notorious for, it just doesn't apply to us, actually. So all that, tatemai stuff that gets people caught up in a lot of relationships and having them to put on these different faces. I've actually never had any troubles with that. That actually benefited me in most ways, because I'm able to go through all these different layers of society, and I'm just who I am, and I can talk to people on a real level, where they don't have to put on that face with me. So I can hang out with CEOs, I can hang out with bartenders, I can hang out with whoever, and it's just been good for me to be able to connect to people on a real level, and kind of go through that kind of complicated part of Japanese society that good or bad. I'm sure a lot of people think I'm doing it the wrong way because I'm not like getting the full Japanese experience or whatever that is. But for me, it's actually been a benefit that not fitting in that way. And yeah, it's the only struggles, I guess, are with myself, really, and just in how ambitious I want to be, or how I kind of take on the next direction. And yeah, after the DJ stuff, I was kind of lost for a little while, because I achieved my dreams, but I didn't know what the next dream was. And yeah, it took me literally until November when I decided to stay here, and then to really find my next step in life. And yeah, I mean, the kids are a big part of it, and staying in Japan is another big part. But once we decided, to put our roots here, then everything just started to line up and fall into place. And yeah, coming out on LinkedIn, meeting you guys, like I was just, I guess, the only struggles I had was really keeping to myself too much and not going out and meeting people. Because once I started coming on LinkedIn, and I went from absolutely nothing on social media on January 1st to meeting you guys and being on this podcast in 6-7 months. So it's been great. It's still my land of opportunity, honestly, and I just haven't tapped into it in the way I wanted to, or I didn't know how to really how to utilize it until very recently. But yeah, it's pretty good. I love my life here.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, I can relate to what you said about social media, because I was not on social media at all until maybe 2017. That is the end of 2007, or even later than that, because I thought that social media was a breach of, it presented that risk of my privacy being violated, and so on and so on. But at the end of the day, look where we are at the moment, where I am at the moment anyway. So it's interesting how life happens. But yeah, and then so your kids now, your older kid, so she goes to kindergarten? Or?
Yeah, that's right. She's 5, and she goes to a local, hoikon, local, what's it called, nursery school. And yeah, it's just a public school. And actually, my son goes too. He just started 2 months ago. And they go to the same place. It's really like, it's a 5-minute walk from my house. This is just super local. And they are one of a handful of, non-Japanese or mixed kids. There used to be, there's an Indian family, there's another, African family, some other South Asian, but yeah, 99% it's a Japanese domestic, school.
Right. So their environment is entirely Japanese, isn't it?
In school, yeah.
In school, yes. Okay, right. That's what I mean, yes.
Right.
Because with my daughter, it's the same. She actually went to a very local hoikuen, and then that hoikuen actually, they did, some of the activities when she turned 3. Actually, they had activities that were similar to those in kindergartens, but it's called all the time hoikuen, because the kids stayed there until 5 or 6 o'clock, and so on and so on. But also that was entirely the environment was entirely Japanese, and of course now she goes to a public school here that is actually kuritsu, which is the local city. What's that? It is managed by the local board of education. Right. And the environment there is also entirely Japanese. Of course, there is a handful of kids who come from international marriages. But when I go to the those are the festivals, school festivals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's really difficult to spot, the non-Japanese parents there.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So and to me, it's been really fascinating to see how the teachers there actually treat the kids from international marriages, because there is, from my experience, and once again, I have said it before, I know that every school is different and every area is different. But in my daughter's school, for example, it's been really, let's say the school itself has been very welcoming. The teachers, they don't actually amplify the awareness among the kids that they're kids from international marriages or whatever. So everybody is treated in the same way. And the one thing that I have noticed actually is that whenever I go there to the parents' meetings, they treat me with a lot of respect and attention, and they worry whether I understand everything or not, which is great for me, because sometimes it happens that I'm not, I cannot get everything they say, especially when the conversations are fast-paced and so on and so on. And I think that, everybody has been very welcoming here. And so far, of course, we don't know what the future holds, but so far it has been wonderful to have my daughter go to that very local school. So, and of course, it was also wonderful to have her go to that hoikuen, and I'll tell you why. So, first, she went to a different hoikuen from the age of 8 months old.
8 months, wow.
8 months, yes, because I had to go back to work.
Got it.
Yes, and so she started going there, and in the beginning, for the first couple of months, she would go there just for the the morning, and then I would leave work early and pick her up and go home. So in the early afternoon. And then after she got used to it, and then I couldn't take, half days any longer of work. So, of course, she would be there until 5 or let's say 6, depending on the day. But then that's the first time. And at that point, they would actually have activities for all the kids. And they would have, they would play together, sing together, and so on and so on. And then we had to move her to another hoikuen from the age of 2.5, which was closer actually to the place where we lived. And what happened there, that hoikuen, it actually is managed by a company that has, it is an educational material company. Oh. And they have, they are a national, let's say, they have hoikuens and kindergartens all through the country. And their principle of, let's say, having the kids there was absolutely different. So they would never actually have, let's say, I don't think this is a good expression, but forced activities of like group activities for the kids. So what they would do, they would have a couple of activities at the same time and let the kids choose which group they wanted to join, depending on what the kids wanted to do at that time.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right.
That sounds like what my kids are in right now.
That sounds great, yes. But at the same time, that hoikuen, they didn't, for the first 1.5 years, they didn't actually get the kids to learn, let's say, letters or numbers or whatever. So everything was free activities through play. Mm-hmm. And of course, after the first hoikuen she went to, I was worried like, oh, give me a break, you're not teaching these kids anything. Right? Mm-hmm. So as a parent, I was worried because I had a base for comparison. And then, of course, I talked with my husband, and we talked with the director of that the second hoikuen. And she explained to us, actually, that there was, their principal, Hoshin, I think this is the principal. So their program actually was that they would start, they would help kids remember, let's say, numbers and letters only through play. Interesting, right? Yeah, and I thought it's not very typical of, let's say the Japanese educational system. And I was worried about that. But you know what happened? Actually, the kids, because I could see also my daughter's friends who would come over and sometimes, play here at home. They all remembered a lot of things, like, once again, the numbers, first from 1 to 10, and then some hiragana letters, and then some katakana letters, and then some kanji characters, and so on and so on. And I was like, this is such a good thing, actually, without having, organized group activities just to let the kids learn through play. But at the same time, I know that company actually is probably quite progressive. And I also, when I talk with one of my neighbors here, her daughter, she went to a different hoikuen. Actually, that was a kindergarten, not a hoikuen. And my neighbor was not very happy because they would really, really impose learning sessions on the kids.
Huh.
And a lot of kids got stressed there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just sharing, my experience, but I wonder what your observations are from the hoikuen your daughter goes to, because she's already 5, and now, of course, your son, but he's still very young, I believe. So I don't know, how do you feel about that? And as a parent, what are your, let's say, takeaways from what you're experiencing at the moment?
Actually, my experience is pretty similar to yours with that free play kind of system. I don't know if you call it system. It's actually pretty cool. My son is 16 months. So in this school, you're like maybe once like when the kids are really young. Because my daughter has been going to the same place since 1.5 years old as well, and they invite the parents to go, and we just dress up in this kind of like cleaners costume thing, and we wear like masks and like sunglasses or whatever. And we pretend we're cleaning, but we're actually observing our own kids in the class, and that was a really cool thing for us. Like, so we can actually see what's going on in the room. And the kid, my kid is still too small to recognize who it is. So like we basically shadowed our kids for a day, and for me it's just watching them play. Like like you said, like learning things naturally and just like not they're okay. So the local this hoikuen, this nursery school, there are 0 lessons, so it's basically just a free for all day long. And so I did that kind of observation with my younger son actually just a month ago, and then a few weeks before that I was invited to see my daughter's class. And of course there's no need to hide, like they know who we are, and they know what's going on. So it's actually me and my wife, we both went together, and we just played with the kids in the class. And it's really just a free-for-all. Like, there's whatever, Legos, there's drawing, there's board games, there's, I don't know, like playing house, playing with a little kitchen, it's totally just playroom all day long. My kids go basically 9 to 5 as well. And for me, I'm cool with it. It's awesome. Like, they feed the kids, they take care of them. Like, just totally random. But last week, my daughter slipped and fell pretty hard. So she damaged her like front teeth, and it was a mess. But the teachers took her, like escorted her really to. They made all the bookings, and they escorted her to a dentist, and they made sure she was okay. And they called my wife, and my wife met up with them, and the teachers actually stayed with them the whole time. And those things to me are really cool, because I don't think we would get that kind of care in the States, especially from a public school. And like I don't have any expectations as far as education. Like I don't really. That's honestly not important at all for me, for these kids at this age. And honestly, even for me, I don't, until high school, I don't think I remember anything. I don't think I studied anything at all. So for me, like, this is just a place for them to hang out and develop social skills, learn some manners, learn not to poke other kids in the eye and not to bite other people. Like as long as they get that and they're fed and they're safe, like I'm cool. I'm totally okay with that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. All those things. But I also remember one thing when my daughter started going to a hoikuen. So at that point, she was still very young. She was not a year-old yet. Mm-hmm. And I remember seeing the teachers in the hoikuen, actually, when I went there the first day. And of course, all the kids were crying. And so what happened, because I took her there a little bit later than usual. So when I went there, all the other kids were already there. And what I saw the teacher do was, and actually it wasn't one teacher. So every class had 6 kids. Especially they call them zero saiji. Those are the youngest kids who are not a year old yet. And for every 2 kids, they had one caregiver. So that's by law, I think it is regulated here. But what really, what I noticed there was that all those teachers, so in my daughter's class, actually 2 of the teachers at that point, they had kangaroos or dakohimo. I don't know how to.
Oh yeah, baby carriers. Yeah,
baby carriers, both in front and on their back.
Wow, that's a workout.
Yes, so they had 2 kids. One of the kids was in the front and one of the kids was in the back.
Wow.
And I was like, are these women supernatural or are they superhuman? Yeah, but they did that because that would make the kids calm down, right? And I thought I could have never had this care back home.
Right.
That was the very first impression I got of the Hoikuen here.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, like, accidents happen, but even when they happen, you get so much care and so much, I don't know. I mean, they try to do everything possible. First, to keep the kids safe and not just quiet, but also psychologically secure, and right? Yep. But also, if there is a physical harm, because kids play and they run and they jump and so on, they take them to hospital and make all the necessary arrangements and so on.
Yeah. But just on that point, like, there's the other side of it is like I have to fight this all the time. Is like that care goes a little bit too far sometimes, and I'm kind of old fashioned, I guess, and I want to raise my kids with a little tough love, and like if my kid runs around and bumps her head, like that's her fault, and I'm gonna let her cry, and I'll just let her deal with that. But in the hoikon in the school, they always give them ice, or they'll sit them down and calm them down and like put a Band-Aid on them or whatever. Yes. And I'm like, this you don't need to like baby my baby, you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to treat them with the oven mitts or bubble wrap my kids, So that's the other side of it, and because nowadays, like my daughter, she'll like whatever get a little paper cut, and like she'll expect to put a Band-Aid or something on that, and I'll just blow on it, give it a kiss, and like, okay, you're good, right? But like, there's both sides to that, I guess. The care is really good, but at the same time, I want them to. It would be nice if they raise them to be a little more independent, I guess. But,
yeah. I agree with you on that, but I think that you are about to see that, I mean, them becoming more independent as they grow up. Because now my daughter, she's going to elementary school. And honestly, I'm just, sometimes when I talk with her and hear her logic and explain herself and her thoughts and talk about her friends and, the relations she has with them. And I'm like, why didn't I grow up like that when I was her age? It's just amazing. And I think that I was overprotected back home. And maybe, part of it was because of school, part of it was because of my parents. And so I really had a hard time when I grew up and when I left home, to just become entirely independent. But now when I talk with her, with my daughter, I mean, it's like, how come I couldn't be like that?
Yeah.
It's just, and I think that you're going to see that. I hope that's the case, that will be the case, of course, because once again, it depends on the school, it depends on the teachers there and so on and so on. But yeah, I think that you're going to enjoy, seeing your daughter becoming more independent in the future. Maybe not as much as you would like her, but still.
Well, that's what I talk about, the mitigation part of things. So one cool thing about, I guess, coming out of the pandemic is I'm getting lots of visitors. It's almost monthly. Somebody I know is coming to Japan now. Maybe you're getting the same kind of influx.
Yeah.
And yeah, just a month ago, my old college roommate, came through Japan, and I didn't talk to this guy in 20 years, and I found out he has 3 kids and the two youngest ones are exactly the same age as my two kids. So I thought, oh, this is perfect. Like, let's go to Ueno Zoo, right? And for me, the interesting thing is, like we're talking about independence and bicultural kids. Like, yeah, like 90% of my daughter's friends are Japanese, and they're just from that local school. And they go to the park after school every day, and she goes to a dance class, and some of the kids are there. Like, she's pretty immersed in this community. So for me, like I'm always interested to see how she interacts with non-Japanese kids. And yeah, like I thought one of the coolest things when she met my friends' kids, she just totally flipped to American, which was which like it kind of freaked me out actually, because she's kind of outgoing by Japanese standards, but then like she totally became like super American, like outgoing at the zoo. And I thought, like, those kind of situations will help kind of balance out the Japanese side, I guess, and kind of infuse a little more of the American into her, like through exactly, like learning through play or communicating through hanging out. That part to me is really interesting to see, and it's totally a full experiment. Even getting my daughter to be bilingual is a total experiment that somehow worked out. Because at home I'll speak English only to the kids, and then my wife will speak Japanese to them, and that's pretty much how we do things. And then as a supplement, we use TV or YouTube, really, and that's English only. And yeah, she'll learn a lot of. I mean, she obviously picked up a lot of slang and communication skills, like communication phrases, I guess, through watching YouTube. And yeah, because like the going back to that zoo story, like her mannerisms changed, which I thought was really interesting, because basically Japanese people don't touch each other, right? But when she was hanging out with my friend's kids, like, yeah, she was totally, like tapping them on the shoulder, giving them hugs, and like pulling them by the arm. And I was like, where did this come from? Who are you? Right? Like, she totally changed. And I thought that was really cool to see that, she can adapt in those ways.
Yeah, I love that, because to me, it's always, okay, if I can, just when go on a tangent here, it's like, when you speak the language, you actually have to speak the culture too, right?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and because Tim always says, you can. Tim, what is that? What you say? You can have a driver's license, but just because you have a driver's license doesn't mean that you can drive a car, or if you don't know
the cultural rules of the road.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like languages are like that. If you don't know how to use it culturally appropriately, then it really doesn't work well. It becomes a weapon and not a tool. So,
oh man, the first 4 years here, I was driving on the wrong side of the road, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, I'm still doing that, but yeah.
Yeah, but your daughter, she's definitely very, very well, not just versed, adapted to both cultures. So she knows how to speak, not just how to speak the languages, but also how to use them. So
yeah, it's an interesting experiment. Like it was an intention from the start. To get the kids to be ready and as adaptable as possible. So that when they grow up, they can choose if they want to stay here or if they want to go and live in America or any other country. Like I just want them to be ready that way. And language is a big part, but at the same time, yeah, exactly, like you're saying, that cultural adaptation. Like I just wanted them to be as kind of versatile as possible, and I didn't want to limit them, to just one culture or one way of being, So yeah, so hanging out with my friends or my cousins when they come by, and then I was thinking in the future, we could spend summers, back in the States, with my friends or my family, my parents, my sisters, whatever. And hopefully that would kind of, offset, the Japanness. Like, I don't know what to call it, but like, not living here 100% of the time, but still having, the option or the experience of going abroad and seeing other cultures, seeing other friends. That's how I plan to raise them.
Yeah. That sounds great to me. It was interesting. I remember now, before the pandemic, it was in 2019. It's already 4 years ago. That's when my daughter was 5 years old. And so we went back home, and then it was fascinating. So we transferred at Doha, and we had maybe about 10 hours between the two airplanes. So, we used 2 or 3 hours to go on a tour and see the city. But then after that, the rest of the time we spent, at the airport. And what is good there, I don't want to make any, advertisements or whatever, but that airport has a lot of playgrounds for kids.
Nice.
And there were kids, from all over the world there.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
And their parents waiting for the next airplane and so on. And all the kids, and they were from 1 year old, toddlers until the age of 7, 8, 9, and all of them played together, and they never ever actually had any difficulty communicating, which was amazing at that time. So for me, it was such a revelation to see that kids actually, even when they didn't speak another language, they would still communicate through play. And I think
beautiful.
It was beautiful to observe. And the same thing happened actually when we went back home, because that was the spring holiday. And a lot of kids whose parents, from international marriages, once again, they were back home. And when we went to the playgrounds, the parks and so on, the kids, once again, there, they would communicate as well without actually speaking the same language. It was such a good thing to see. And as you say, it's a beautiful thing to see. But I think that even in Japan, because I remember before my daughter was born, before she started going to school, I had heard a lot of people actually, let's say, express their dissatisfaction with the Japanese educational system. I believe that there are things that need to change. But at the same time, I think that there are a lot of good things here as well. And probably, again, the benefits actually outweigh the disadvantages.
Right. I totally, completely agree with that. And the education system as a whole definitely needs a redesign. But like I said, I think people that, disparage the education system, I think they kind of diminish their own ability as parents to, offset those issues. I really don't care at all for education, honestly. And I don't expect any, I don't care if my kids get good grades or bad grades, as long as they come out as good humans. That's all. That's my minimum expectation for the education system. And I don't care if they know a million kanji or don't know any. That part to me doesn't really matter. I think I guess in Japanese education, I guess the image is that they're gonna learn a lot of how to listen and follow rules, I guess. And coming from America, we learn opinions and debate and things like that. And that might be missing in the education and the academics here. But again, I feel like at home we can kind of offset that, or
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And if we just have a barbecue together, we can do that in our own environment that we create for the kids. So that's a big part of my next phase in life too, is being able to connect people like us, in these international marriages, and just give the kids a place to really be all sides of themselves.
Yes.
and not have to really choose or diminish one side of the other. That's just a big thing I'm working towards right now.
I love that, because one thing that we need nowadays more of is actually being able to listen to others and hear them and understand their perspective, because maybe this was exacerbated by the pandemic and how people went online and, the how social media work and so on. But I think that during the past several years, the society, not only here in Japan, maybe Japan less so than in other parts of the world, but we have lost the ability to actually listen to others and try to see their point of view and understand their point of view. And that's one of the things that I want my daughter actually to be able to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because if we don't learn to understand others, the divide will or that gap will continue to expand, and it's not going into a good direction at all. So I wanted to say one thing, because you're right that there are certain things that probably need to change here in the educational system, but I can say that there is a very good example now in my daughter's class. There is a boy who is really, I don't know how to put it, and my English vocabulary, I have lost a lot of English vocabulary during the past several years, but that boy in my daughter's class, he is really a problematic student.
Okay. Yeah.
Everybody knows that. And sometimes, the teacher, of course, she would, just include him in all the activities and try, to make his being there easier and more comfortable. And I'm not saying that that boy is anywhere on the spectrum. So that's not the case. Obviously, there are other problems at home and so on.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that, of course, when she comes back from school, sometimes my daughter, she would say, "Do you know what M-san did today?" And she would talk about, how the behavior of that boy was really unacceptable and so on, and how he inconvenienced everybody in class, and how the teacher was really just had difficulty dealing with him and so on. But at the same time, she would say, there are people like that and we cannot help it. Mm-hmm. So everybody in class actually tried to put up with him.
Wow. That's amazing.
So it is amazing, yes. And I think, like back home, I never had such experience when I was her age. But at the same time, I think that even if I had such an experience, we wouldn't have been able to be so accepting, inclusive, yes, as a group.
Yeah, that's cool. And actually, I'm glad to hear that they're keeping that kid with the other kids. Because I was really shocked. Because one of the things I do a lot is diversity and inclusion in Japanese companies, and I was just talking to this NPO the other day, and I was shocked that I had no idea that they totally separated those special needs kids from the regular kids. They're in the same school, but those kids get their own classroom, and they're basically isolated from the other kids, and even though they're all in the same grade, the same age, but they eat separately, they learn separately, everything is separate. And for me, I was really shocked and sad to hear that. I grew up in New York, and those kids we were all together. Kind of like what your daughter's situation is, and it was just normal. Exactly, like some kids have whatever, they have different issues, or they have different I don't know, physical or mental or spiritual needs, and that's okay. That's just society, really, and that's just what it is, living in a population. And I was really sad to hear that in Japan it was pretty standard to separate kids like that, and I think it would help a lot if they just brought them together more often.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that probably there is a movement towards changing that nowadays.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
So, and of course, just like everything else here, this happens very slowly. It takes longer than it would take in any other part of the world.
True.
But I believe that, there is that awareness and of the need to change things, actually.
I hope so. I don't know. It depends on who you talk to. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. That's true, too.
School is very slow to change, I feel. So at least hearing your daughter's story, that gives me hope that is one step towards progress, at least. And teaching kids to be more empathetic and inclusive from that age, it's definitely going to have a long-term effect and benefit, for society as a whole, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yes.
Yeah, because you know that phrase, the nail that sticks out gets hammered in, and that's throughout all of Japan, and it's just really sad that if people are not, quote unquote normal, then they get pushed to the sides, or they get looked at as different, and I think a big part of that does start from the school, and kind of bullying or isolating people that are different, but what is normal, what is different, and I think hopefully there is, like, if you say there's people that sense a need for change, I really hope that they're real about that. That's some truth that they need to, or they feel that they need, that they can have an impact and influence things to actually make change. Yeah. So,
but Alex, I'm really optimistic about the next generations, because of course, when I compare Japan now to Japan as it was 22 years ago when I came here, I can see that there are so many more foreigners and there are so many more international marriages here. And these marriages and the kids of these marriages, they're going to have an impact on the local culture as well.
Yeah.
And of course, nobody wants to admit it, but Japan doesn't have much choice but to let more foreigners in the next decade, at least.
That's another good conversation to have. Yeah.
Yes, and I believe that the kids that come from, let's say, those international marriages, or from the marriages, let's say, the foreign marriages, entirely foreign marriages here, so they will inevitably have this effect on the culture. And one thing that I hope is that the effect will be positive, because we know that change could be both positive and negative. So I don't know how it will be in the future, but I really believe that we are very, very soon going to see some change here.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I share the same optimism, and I feel like I want to push things that way, and that's what I'm trying to do, through my kids, and even through local communities.
So Alex, I have a question for you about your inclusiveness. As we both know, you're from the b-boy world originally, and my son was a b-boy, and again, I'm just an old fart, but what I loved about b-boy culture, that I didn't know it until I started hanging out with these young kids, my son's friends, how inclusive they were, but nobody really talked about it. It was a cultural thing. They were just inclusive. They were doing it through their actions.
Yep.
And this was, this is before people were talking about it and preaching it. They were just doing it. Mm-hmm. And it struck me that I think maybe that had a strong influence on you personally. And it also struck me that I think winning over people in a cultural way will lead to that behavior in a very natural, positive, lasting way. And I was wondering, you've interfaced with the b-boy culture in Japan. Do you feel there's the same level of inclusiveness in the b-boy world, which is a powerful cultural force, I think?
Yeah, that awesome question. I like you said, I'm from New York, so hip hop is just how I grew up, and I think that culture, that competition, that healthy competition, it's a real true like meritocracy. It's like you know who is good and who is winning, and it doesn't matter what background they are or what it's actually expected. We're all different anyway, and it just matters how good you are, how are your skills, how are you going to perform, how are you going to battle that day, and we can all learn from each other, and we all help each other, and we all try to raise, what is it, rising tide raises all boats, or whatever that is, and we just all grew together, and that was something that was I guess left a huge imprint on me, and I didn't make that connection until you brought that up, but the Japanese b-boy community is kind of funny. Like they're very inclusive, of course, when they meet other cultures. But within the culture of Japanese to Japanese, they still keep that senpai kohai system thing, and that part I was kind of disappointed in. That seniors and juniors, and I've been here longer than you, and you're new. Like you have to pay your dues, kind of like that part of Japanese culture seeped into the hip hop, and that part didn't really sit well with me. But still, like when they go abroad or when they meet other non-Japanese, like we're best friends from day one. But just seeing them do that to each other is that kind of was a lost in translation, I guess. Part of hip hop coming to Japan. Things might have changed now. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. What was really cool to me is my son Grady actually hosted b-boys from Japan. They came to Hawaii. A lot of them were young backpackers, right?
Oh, cool.
And he became friends with them, and through his friendships in the hip hop b-boy world, he made friends around the world. So when my son came with us to Japan, he met his friend in Osaka, another b-boy, and then he met their friends like it was us in socially.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, to them, he's a foreigner, even though he's half, he's a foreigner. So anyway, I think it's just an interesting culture, and a lot of old fogies my age, I think, maybe don't appreciate the actual inclusiveness. And they're walking the talk. They're not talking a lot about it. They're just doing it. And I really respected that and felt they were light years ahead of my generation at that age.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, actually, that brings back a lot of memories too. Because like I've been to like Maine and like Rhode Island, all these random places, like just for hip hop actually. Like because I get invited to these battles, or I just meet some cool people and they just say, hey, we're gonna have this event. Like, why don't you come by? And like being able to travel and connect with people so far away from home. Well, for me, New York to Rhode Island seemed far, but coming to Japan too, and just like I actually thought I was going to retire when I came here, and I was old at 22, but I thought I was going to give up dancing. But then when I came here, like the station I lived at, like at nighttime, became like a dance studio, and I thought, oh, this is so cool that because I don't know if they still do it now, but at that time, the windows at the station, basically become giant mirrors at night, and a lot of the local kids would just gather there and just practice dancing at night, and that became my first social circle here in Japan. And some of those people I still contact now, which is so cool. And like I was able to, I guess, get a head start on my social life in Japan through hip hop and dance in that way. And at that time, I knew zero Japanese, and I couldn't communicate at all. And it brings me back to that Maya's story about kids in the playing in the airport, because that's basically what I was doing. I was just dancing with kids and communicating through popping, breakdancing, spinning on my head. Like that's how I could communicate with kids in Japan. And really, I'm making all these connections now. I didn't realize it at the time. But like,
so zooming out, I guess what I'm kind of implying maybe is if the schools are going to struggle in their inclusiveness, I'm wondering, will culture change have maybe a bigger impact? We don't know. I don't know the answer moving forward. That was kind of like, and I don't know. I'm sure you don't know the answer either, but you can hope, for that.
Yeah. And I feel like that is somewhere where I would like to tip the scales, or at least think that I could push things in that way.
Yeah.
And I mean, well, all we need is a boombox and some linoleum, and kids can play.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and maybe this applies to my situation, raising two, biracial kids in America versus doing it in Japan. We try to instill a strong sense of identity, and we wanted them to be proud of their heritage on both sides. So we always played up their Japanese roots. We visited Japan regularly. So in their mind, Japan was this wonderful country, but we also wanted them to be proud of who they were, and their roots on my side. And I think we succeeded because they did embrace both, and they felt secure in their own identity. So I think that sounds like what you're doing, Alex, and hats off to you.
Well, you're the dream situation. That's what I'm aiming towards. Because I mean, we didn't even get to talk about pride today, but yeah, that's something I strongly want to instill in my kids too. That they're I hate the word half. They're more than, they're not even double. They're like square. They're way beyond what I could ever have been. Like I'm just whatever, Chinese American, but I don't really connect with the Chinese side of me. But I want my kids to at least recognize and be proud of, all aspects of who they are, racially, culturally, and like exactly like what you've done with your kids, Tim, is just make them happy, good, balanced people, so that when they are ready to enter the world, they can do it in their own way, and not have to be limited by someone else's view or society's whatever limitations that put on them. Like actually this Friday I'm giving a talk at one of my clients, and it really, your story about the kids in the airport is basically what I was going to say in my talk, that no matter who we are and where we grew up, we all started as kids, babies that played peekaboo, right? And doesn't matter what culture or where or what circumstances we grew up in, we all were babies that at one time, peekaboo was the most amazing thing in the world, right? Because my son's going through this now. He could play this for hours. It's ridiculous, right? But I think if all of us, because like you say, like there's a lot of chaos in the world right now, and a lot of like divisions. But if we could all go back to playing peekaboo or just playing with other kids in the airport, and if we could all restart our view of other people from that perspective, I think it could do a lot of good. So, yeah.
Yeah, Alex, thank you so much for saying that, because I remember when my daughter was still, maybe she was 3 or 4 months old, and I remember one day I was walking with her and she was in the kangaroo once again, sorry. Mm-hmm. And then I also saw a mother who was really scolding her son, maybe 5 or 6 year old son, in the street, and the boy was crying and she was really shouting at him. And I was like, I mean, just remember that boy was that baby, a couple of years ago. Yep. And also I remember that an elderly woman came, and she didn't, of course, that woman didn't say anything, but she was maybe about 70 or 80 years old. And then when I looked at the woman, I thought, and that woman, she was also once upon a time a baby.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody, think about this, like everybody has been somebody's child.
Yes.
And everybody has been a baby at some point of time. And so we need to remember that. And we need to remember that, yes, we were all the same, and we are still all the same. Just the cultural differences, they build up and build up. And being able to reach out to others and get beyond or get over those cultural differences in a very human way, in a very basic way, is what we need to be able to do, or to 100%. Learn how to do things.
Yes. Completely agree with that. Yeah. So I mean, thank you so much for you guys for having me on here today.
Well, thank you, Alex, for being with us. It was really a pleasure having you with us. And Tim, thank you for the support. And to everybody who listened, stayed with us on this Wednesday morning. So this is all for today. To everybody, have a great midweek and enjoy the day.